Hey guys, so I'm back with more art talk. All right, basically it's just another Q&A. I'm gonna get right into it. Christopher asks, is there a specific movement or period in art history that inspires you most? And I would say that I focus mostly on the French Impressionists, so like 1870s. In the United States, there was a lot of Impressionist movements here, like the California Impressionism, Laguna Beach in the south, Carmel up in the north here. Also on the East Coast, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, I believe. Edward Redfield, Daniel Garber. I really like those paintings as well. So I would say that that period, say from 1870 to maybe the 1920s, just impressionistic both in France and the United States. Those are the big influences on me. All right, Penny asks, and others have asked this as well, like why do you sketch in orange or why do you sketch in burnt sienna? You can sketch in any color you want. I just like to sketch in burnt sienna because I do a lot of plein air painting, and burnt sienna is kind of an orange color, and then when you get those little areas that are unpainted, you see a little bit of that drawing popping through. It acts as a nice complement to your to the blues and greens that you find in nature. It also doesn't like pollute or corrupt or dirty up the colors that you lay on top of it, because it's a transparent color. And it's, you know, if you were to use something like, you know, some really strong tint, it could be a problem. But you can sketch in anything you want. I mean, I know people who sketch with ultramarine or even say yellow ochre, which that's kind of light, but I see people do that too. So let's see, Joyce asks, when you sell a painting on Instagram, are you selling it framed? And what do you do for shipping? When I sell paintings off Instagram or even off my website or whatever, typically people want my frames. And as you guys know, I make natural wood floater frames. So most of the time people request them with frames. I'd be happy to sell unframed, but it's just, like I said, most people want the frames. So I do sell them framed. And then as for shipping, I've done a lot of shipping, and what I've found is that United States Post Office priority mail is the most affordable way to ship a painting. And you can buy insurance too. I don't even know if I mean, I've insured paintings for up to $1,000 on there. I'm not sure if they have a limit, but I've mostly sent small work through the United States Post Office because over, like, say the size of a 16 by 20, the box becomes too big and it exceeds their limitations, and then you've got to go off to either, like, say FedEx or UPS. Sometimes UPS is better price-wise, and sometimes FedEx is better depending on where you're going to be shipping. And then as far as charging people or how do you handle payments, I usually use PayPal, or people will mail me a check. Angelica asks, it takes so long for my underpainting to dry, I get impatient. How can I make it dry faster? If you're painting wet on wet like I do, or alla prima, which is just like you're doing a whole painting in one session, and that's the style of painting that I'm drawn to, I don't let the underpainting dry. That's why you want to put on the first layer of paint where you're kind of approximating colors. You want that layer to be thin. If you're outdoors and you've kind of thinned the paint with odorless mineral spirits, if you're using a canvas, that first layer gets scrubbed into the canvas, and it's quite easy to come right over it almost immediately with thicker paint. So you're working thin to thick, or lean to fat, as they say. But if you're laying down thick paint to start off with, and then you're trying to come over that with, more thick paint, it's just going to get messy and turn into mud or whatever. So typically that's what I do, especially with canvases. On panels, it's a little harder because, I put pumice into my gesso, so it's more absorbent. So I do get a bit of that first layer, if it's thin, soaking into the panel, which helps. But it is harder to come over that with paint, but it's still workable, and it's just something you're going to have to experiment with. So I go thin, and then I come in with a thicker paint, and it seems to work fine. It just takes practice. Ash asks, when did you start painting? I started painting in August of 2003. So going on 17 years. Haywood Beeman asks, what do you do when you're uninspired or don't know what to paint? And then also, what are good paintings to copy for practice? What I do when I'm uninspired mostly is I just get outdoors. You know, I just there's a lot of times where I make myself go out and paint when I'm uninspired, because once I get started, then I'm fine. And I find that when I'm out on location, there's always inspiration out there. A good cup of coffee can help too. Definitely. Get big strong cup of coffee and get outside. That really works. But the one thing you have to realize is that you do sometimes have to make yourself paint. You've got to motivate. It's not like, I think there is this myth that you're going to be inspired all the time. I find that that's not the case. It's, you know, there are times where I'm really itching to do a particular painting, or a time where I'm really just dying to get outdoors. But mostly it becomes something you have to really make sure you do. It's a discipline, it's a practice. And there are times when you don't feel like painting and you just say, okay, I know once I get set up and I pick up the brush, I'm going to be fine. I find that I have that trouble mostly with commissions. I don't have a problem with inspiration or being motivated when it comes to just doing things that I like to paint. I have that problem, you know, I have the problem of motivating when I have a commission to do. That's why I don't do them anymore, really, because I would put them off. It's something I'm not looking forward to, basically because a commission, there's a different mindset. It's one where there's an expected outcome. And I just don't like to paint with an expected outcome. I like to go into a painting open-minded with this sort of, you know, no expectation of it being a success. It's just, I'm just going to give it a go and have fun with this and see what happens. Whereas, you know, painting a commission, there's an expectation that it's going to be good, you know, and it's an expectation by somebody else. So I tend to be not motivated to do those. And when I'm uninspired to do them, I just discipline myself and I make myself get going on it. And that usually helps. So it requires some discipline. Another thing you can do to keep motivated is set up a file on or an album on your computer of images. So when you're looking for something to paint, you can go to that album and start looking through and finding inspiring paintings. So I used to do that in the beginning when I was primarily doing a lot of studio painting. And I still have those albums that I can go to and paint from if I'm like stuck inside or whatever. So that can help too. All right. And then what are good paintings to copy for practice? I know a lot of painters will do that. A lot of painters will go to, say, like a museum and copy masterworks, and you'll see that at the Louvre or at some museums. I've never really copied. I think I did copy a Nikolai Fashin once, who's kind of an impressionistic painter living in, I believe he's living in the Southwest. And I did one of his portrait paintings. I really liked. The faces would be kind of defined, but then everything around would be super loose. I copied one of those, but that's really been it. I think it can be a good thing to do as far as what paintings are good to copy. I would say anything that has effects, any sort of painting that has effects that you would want to incorporate into your painting. It can be really good to, if you're recreating that painting, you're going to be very carefully looking and analyzing the brush strokes and the color mixing and all that sort of thing. So I think it could be a good thing to do, and I would just do paintings that inspire you, or ones that, you know, may have qualities that you would want to incorporate into your work. All right, Christopher asks, how often do you work on architecture paintings? So when I paint San Francisco, obviously there's a lot of architecture. And when I first started painting, I was really more focused on painting houses in the landscape, or street scenes and that sort of thing. And I still occasionally do that, but not that often. I would say for my show in San Francisco, usually I will have about 10% of that show, well, actually it's more than that, probably 25% of that show is paintings of San Francisco where there are, you know, Victorians or houses or street scenes and that sort of thing. I find that when I used to be painting scenes of houses and stuff like that, it was harder to find subject matter. You're on the hunt. You end up driving around a lot. Whereas when you're just painting pure landscape, you can show up at the same spot and every day it's going to be different. You know, the tide is different, the lighting is different depending on the time of the year. There's just so much variety. I find a certain freedom in that. It's not like I'm out looking for a specific thing. Nature is timeless, it's endless, and to me it's like it's the most challenging and the most fun to paint. That is it for this batch of questions. Let me know if you got more down below. It is kind of sunny out, kind of half and half, so I'm gonna go out on my driveway and do some touch-ups on some landscapes. Maybe I'll film that and put that out as the next video. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, guys. See you in the next video.